Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life. I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and...
For 1,000 years, the British crown has passed from monarch to monarch through death, abdication, or ceremony. What is happening right now, in the middle of 2026, doesn't fit neatly into any of those categories. King Charles III still sits on the throne. He still opens Parliament, still reads his red boxes, still receives ambassadors at Buckingham Palace. But inside the institution itself, something quieter and stranger is unfolding, a gradual, undeclared redistribution of responsibility from an ailing king to his son. This is a story about a monarchy in transition, told through what can actually be confirmed. And it's also a story about how much of what circulates online about that transition is speculation dressed up as certainty. Let's start with what we know for sure, because the facts alone are dramatic enough. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles III, then 75 years old, had been diagnosed with a form of cancer. The palace did not disclose which type, only that it was separate from the benign prostate condition he'd been treated for days earlier. Charles had been on the throne for less than a year and a half at that point, having become king in September 2022 at age 73, the oldest person ever to inherit the British crown. He began treatment almost immediately, and in the months that followed, continued to carry out public duties while managing his illness largely out of view. Then, within weeks, a second blow landed on the family. In March 2024, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, announced that she too had been diagnosed with cancer, following abdominal surgery that revealed the presence of cancer cells. She stepped back from public life for the better part of a year to undergo preventative chemotherapy. For a stretch of 2024, the monarchy found itself in an almost unthinkable position. The reigning king and the future queen consort were both in active cancer treatment at the same time. It's difficult to overstate how much strain that put on an institution that depends, more than almost any other in Britain, on the appearance of continuity and stability. Prince William, according to reporting from royal author Robert Jobson in his book The Windsor Legacy, asked to step back from his own royal duties in 2024 to focus on his wife and children. Charles reportedly declined that request. Instead, William found himself absorbing more of the public-facing burden of the monarchy at precisely the moment his family was at its most fragile. By late 2024 and into 2025, Catherine's health had improved. She confirmed her own remission and spoke publicly, including in an interview with actor Eugene Levy, about things gradually returning to normal. She and William began appearing together at more events, and by early 2026, Catherine had marked her recovery with renewed public engagements, including a joint hospital visit with William to thank NHS staff. Meanwhile, Charles's own health picture has been described differently at different points in 2026. Palace communications early in the year characterized a scaling back of his treatment intensity as encouraging progress, described by the king himself in a broadcast for a cancer awareness campaign as something he experienced almost as a relief. Other reporting later in the year struck a more cautious note, with palace officials clarifying that while treatment had been reduced, the cancer itself was not in remission, and that his condition continued to be described in some briefings as precarious. Royal commentators have been divided on how to read this. Some frame it as a monarch determined not to let illness define his reign, pointing to a busy 2026 travel schedule, including a planned state visit to the United States. Others frame it as an institution quietly preparing for the possibility that Charles's reign may be shorter than his public schedule suggests. Against that backdrop, William's role has visibly expanded, and this part is not speculation. Royal correspondents covering 2026 have consistently reported that William and Catherine are being given heavier constitutional responsibilities, including expanded patronages and a more prominent public presence at state occasions. At a state banquet in March 2026 honoring Nigeria's president, multiple accounts described William and Catherine as the visibly dominant presence in the room, with observers noting Charles appeared frail by comparison, though Buckingham Palace has not directly addressed those specific characterizations. What's being reported, in other words, is less a single dramatic handover and more an accumulating pattern. A king managing serious illness while trying to maintain the appearance of a full reign, and a Prince of Wales increasingly stepping into the space that illness leaves behind. Now here's where the story gets murkier, and where it's important to separate confirmed reporting from tabloid narrative. Over the past year, a cluster of stories, many originating from outlets that specialize in unverified royal gossip rather than confirmed palace reporting, have claimed that Charles has effectively handed William final authority over the monarchy's response to family crises, including matters involving Prince Andrew. Some of these accounts describe an explicit, dramatic ultimatum delivered by William to Queen Camilla over her friendship with Sarah Ferguson. Others describe open hostility between Camilla and Catherine, framed almost as a rivalry for influence inside the palace. These are vivid, compelling narratives, and it's easy to see why they spread. They turn an abstract institutional transition into a story with heroes, villains, and confrontations. But Buckingham Palace has not confirmed an explicit transfer of final authority, has not confirmed any ultimatum delivered to Camilla, and has not confirmed the specific rivalry narrative being described. What we actually have is a pattern of anonymous royal insider sourcing, often from publications that do not meet the evidentiary bar of confirmed news reporting, layered on top of facts that are genuinely true. Charles's illness, William's expanded role, real historical tension around how the family handled Prince Andrew's fall from public life following his widely criticized 2019 television interview about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It's worth pausing on that distinction, because it matters for understanding how modern royal coverage works. The monarchy is one of the most heavily covered institutions on Earth, and much of that coverage exists in a gray zone between journalism and entertainment. Royal biographers with genuine sourcing sit alongside outlets that specialize in dramatized, anonymously sourced narratives designed for maximum shareability. Both categories often get described using similar language. Insiders say, sources close to the family reveal, royal watchers believe. The genuinely confirmed facts in this story are remarkable on their own. A king managing cancer while trying to fulfill the role he waited 7 decades to inherit. A future king absorbing responsibility during his family's most difficult stretch in years. A princess who fought through her own diagnosis and returned to public life. None of that needs embellishment to be a compelling story about an institution under real pressure. What can be said with more confidence is this. William has, for years, spoken publicly about wanting a more modern, more accountable monarchy. In a conversation with Eugene Levy on Apple TV Plus in 2025, William acknowledged that change is something he thinks about, while also recognizing the tension built into reforming an institution whose entire purpose is symbolizing continuity. Those who have worked with him on his management of the Duchy of Cornwall, the substantial estate he inherited when his father became king, describe him as someone who pushes for clearer accountability and challenges old assumptions about how things have traditionally been done. That's consistent with a broader trend royal watchers have tracked for years. A slow generational shift toward a smaller, more streamlined monarchy, with fewer working royals and tighter public scrutiny of anyone representing the crown. Whether that shift accelerates because of Charles's health, or because of specific family conflicts, or simply because institutions evolve over time, is something that will likely only become clear with more time and more confirmed reporting. There's also a broader public opinion context worth including, because it shapes why all of this matters beyond palace walls. Support for the monarchy among younger generations in the UK has been tracked as declining in various polling over the past several years, part of a longer-term trend rather than a sudden 2026 phenomenon. That backdrop is part of why William's public emphasis on transparency and modernization resonates the way it does. Whether or not the more dramatic tabloid narratives about explicit power struggles turn out to be accurate, the institution is operating in an environment where public trust cannot simply be assumed, and where each high-profile controversy involving the family carries real reputational weight. So where does that leave the actual state of things? As of the middle of 2026, Charles remains king. He continues to carry out official duties, including plans for a high-profile state visit to the United States, and has described his current health management in more optimistic terms in some public statements, even as other reporting suggests his condition remains serious and closely monitored. Catherine has recovered from her own cancer treatment and has gradually resumed a fuller public schedule alongside William. William himself has taken on a heavier and more visible institutional role than would typically be expected of an heir at this stage, driven by the practical reality of his father's illness rather than any confirmed formal transfer of power. And the family, like most families dealing with serious illness and public scrutiny simultaneously, appears to be navigating real internal strain, the specifics of which, beyond what's been officially confirmed, remain genuinely uncertain. The most honest way to describe what's happening inside the House of Windsor right now isn't a single decisive event, an abdication, a coup, an ultimatum, but something slower and in its own way more human, an aging king managing serious illness while trying to fulfill a role he waited his entire life to hold, and an heir gradually, unevenly, and under real pressure stepping into more of the responsibility that comes with it. Whether that gradual shift eventually becomes a formal transition, and what shape the monarchy takes when it does, isn't something that can be confidently predicted from where things stand today. What can be said is that the institution is visibly adapting to a genuinely difficult period, and that how it handles the next stretch, Charles's health, the family's public conduct, and its ability to demonstrate the kind of accountability William has spoken about, will likely matter more for its long-term standing than any single rumored confrontation behind palace doors. That's the state of the British monarchy as it actually stands right now. Real illness, real strain, real generational change happening gradually, and a great deal of speculation filling in the gaps that official sources haven't confirmed. Distinguishing between those two categories isn't just good practice for anyone covering this story. It's the only way to actually understand an institution that has always been defined as much by the stories told about it as by the facts underneath them.